The SEC at 20. What will it look like? Talking the sport we all love here at the Voice of College Football each and every day with you. Best discussion, debate, and analysis based on your participation. We appreciate you stopping by. Please give us a like and please subscribe. If you have followed us during this entire 3 to 4 years of realignment shakeup across college football, you know that here at the Voice of College Football, we have delivered content. We have gone live with you based on two conditions. Number one would be when there's actual breaking news. Obviously, the announcement of Oklahoma, Texas to the SEC or USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon to the Big Ten is big, huge, groundbreaking news, historic news, and we go directly to you. We go live. We analyze the move, why it happened, the pros and the cons for the conference and for the schools. We lay out the football landscape, the football history. We have matched up all these schools against their new conferences. Check out those videos. And we have looked at possible scheduling models and division alignment. Condition number two in which we go live is when we have substantial, meaningful people in authority, athletic directors, chancellors, presidents, who state on record something similar to what the North Carolina AD said recently when he said, we have to leave the ACC. Therefore, it means something. Florida State and Clemson have taken the ACC to court. It is almost a 100% guarantee that Clemson and Florida State will be leaving the ACC. And what will happen with the ACC past that, we will deal with that later in the week. It is realignment week here at the Voice of College Football. So what are we doing here is we are serving up realignment models. These are not necessarily my predictions. They are possibilities. This is for discussion. This is for debate. Check out the video we posted on Sunday night with the Big Ten at 20. Now introducing the SEC at 20. Florida State, Clemson, they are leaving the ACC. Florida State has been rumored to go to the Big Ten. That would be a tremendous entry for the Big Ten. It would also be a tremendous elevation for Florida State, certainly to align with the Big Ten. From a purely football standpoint, not looking at the academic institution or the finances or any of that, Florida State and Clemson are SEC football schools. The culture, the fan bases, the history on the field, they have rivalries in state with South Carolina and with Florida. They are football playing schools that belong in the SEC. Therefore, we are looking at Florida State and Clemson moving to the SEC. And also, it has been talked about by reliable sources in recent weeks that the SEC would like to stake its ground in both Virginia and North Carolina, despite the football product not being at a high SEC level or even a mid-SEC level, especially at Virginia, that the SEC would gain much ground, much territory, many eyeballs if it gained the flagship schools at Virginia and at North Carolina. So let's look at the SEC at 20. Imagine an SEC Eastern Division of 10 teams: Georgia, Florida, Florida State, South Carolina, Clemson, Tennessee, Vandy, North Carolina, and Virginia. We keep these rivalries intact. Georgia, Florida, Florida, Florida State, South Carolina, Clemson, Clemson, Florida State, Tennessee, Vandy, Tennessee, Kentucky, also North Carolina and Virginia. So the SEC Eastern Division could look like that. The SEC Western Division going forward with 10 teams: Bama, Auburn, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Texas, Oklahoma, LSU, Arkansas, Mizzou, and Texas A&M. Again, a very nice and neat compilation of rivalries here. Bama, Auburn, the Iron Bowl. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, the Egg Bowl. Texas, OU, the Red River rivalry. Then we've got LSU, and of course, they stay in the same division with Ole Miss and with Bama. We've got LSU and Arkansas together. We've got Arkansas and Texas A&M, a newly founded SEC rivalry that stays intact. Arkansas and Mizzou, the same thing. Oklahoma reunited against Mizzou. And then, of course, we've got Texas and Texas A&M playing in the same division. Now, what about competitive balance? That makes sense geographically and in terms of rivalries, but competitive balance, we want the divisions to be somewhat balanced. Now, we can't predict the future, but the past and the trajectory is certainly a good predictor of the future. And we've had these issues in the Big Ten with the Western Division not meeting at the elite level at the top line, being able to match the Big Ten Eastern Division. And it makes for a very boring and lopsided championship game on an annual basis. But when we look at the competitive nature of these two divisions, so this past season, the Eastern Division went 74-54, meaning these 10 teams last season in 2023, 74-54, 42-42 in conference play. The new Western Division at 88-42, so roughly 12 to 14 games better, 51-32 in conference play, so about 9 games better, and there you see the winning percentages as well. But that's just one season. Let's look over the 10 seasons of the college football playoff. This Eastern Division has 747 wins and 522 losses compared to the West mark of 813 and 467. So there's no doubt that the West is stronger than the East based on last season and the last 10 seasons by about 65 games total. So that's about 6 games per team over 10 years. So the only possible remedy we have for that, it doesn't make complete geographic sense, but it's close. If you take Bama and Auburn and you move them to the East and replace them with Tennessee and Vandy, so you could make that trade that would be meaningful and wouldn't upset the geographic continuity much. Or we could go to 4 divisions of 5 teams in each division, and that setup would look something like this. The Eastern Division, Clemson, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and then we've got Tennessee in the same division. The Southeast Division, or whatever you want to call it, Georgia, Florida, Florida State, Vandy, and Kentucky. All right, on to the Central Division of Bama, Auburn, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, LSU. And again, we are keeping rivalries in line, and even the rivalries that are played outside the divisions, those could be protected every season. For example, Bama and Tennessee could still play every year. And in the Western Division, we've got Oklahoma, Texas, Texas A&M, Arkansas, and Mizzou. In this 4-division model, we would play a 9-game conference schedule. So each team would play all 4 division opponents, and then they would rotate 5 games against the other 15 teams in the conference. And the only thing that I would opt for here is a balanced schedule in determining those 5 opponents that would rotate through the rest of the league. Then you've got a championship situation in which you've got to play a semifinal of the 1 seed versus the 4 seed, the 2 seed versus the 3 seed, and all of them would be division champions. Now, the issue you run into with a 20-team league and 2 divisions of 10 teams is that even if you go to a 9-game conference schedule, of course, the SEC currently plays 8 conference games, you have to play everyone in your division. So you play a 9-game conference schedule, you're playing a 9-game division schedule, you're playing nobody in the other division. So I don't think that's right. I don't think it's healthy for college football, especially for the teams that don't compete for championships. For example, under these 2 divisions, South Carolina would never play Mississippi State, never play Ole Miss, never play Arkansas, never play LSU, never play Missouri, and all these other teams. The only 2 teams that would play cross-division would meet in the conference championship game. So I don't like the split of the 10 and 10 solely because there's no crossover games. And you've got to play everyone in your division. Otherwise, you're creating the possibilities of, first of all, not having a legitimate division championship because you've got different schedules. And number 2, having a head-to-head tie for a division championship among 2 teams that did not play during the regular season. That would be a nightmare scenario. Or you could play everyone 1 through 20, meaning no divisions at all. Just 1 through 20, similar to what the Big Ten and the SEC are doing with 18 and 16 teams this year. and then you simply crown the top two teams as the championship game participants, but you run into an elaborate number of tiebreakers that need to be airtight to distinguish if you've got a tie for second place in the conference and those two teams didn't play, then you need an airtight tie-breaking system. And the issue there, if you go through the history of college football during conference championship play, the majority of conference championship game participants had what record? One loss in the conference. If we went through and we mapped it all out, I guarantee you that the majority of teams, far more frequent, more common than any other record, would have one loss. Therefore, you would have two teams frequently that would tie for second place in the conference, and you would have to determine which team goes to the conference championship game. The bottom line is that the larger the conferences are, the more difficult it is to devise a format that is legitimate, that is fair, and that is equitable, and that is, again, valid in determining a champion, because you have less teams playing against each other that play in the same conference. We would be up to 20 teams playing 9 conference games. Therefore, every team would play 9 conference games, but they would miss 10 opponents within their own conference. It's a mess, but it's fun. And that's a look at the SEC with Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, and Virginia as added members to the conference going forward. So the SEC at 20, would love to know what you think right here at the Voice of College Football.